Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. And I really want to thank Jason, David, and Teo for inviting me to just talk about trombone with you guys. And this is what I always loved about the trombone community. I mean, even from my very first, back then, Eastern trombone workshop, is that, the trombone community is amazing. And, it doesn't matter who you're talking to. I mean, everybody has the same goal in mind, wanting to get better, and it's just, and the hang is important too. I mean, that's why I like that this is called the International Trombone Hang, because when we go to these conferences, like that's the big thing for me, is just hanging out and meeting new people. And this platform is awesome. Going on a year now strong, so thank you guys so much for bringing this platform to our trombone community. And so I'm going to be sharing a screen from the McCain Duo's um, account, because I can't really share screen and sound on this current computer. But I'm just going to be talking about some different warm up techniques that I do every day. So just bear with me 1 second. Okay. All right. So, when I was invited to discuss like having a warm up session, like the things that I do are definitely not like reinventing the wheel whatsoever. There's like a lot of great resources out there that I like to use. When I was coming up, in school, and when there were various guest artists that would come through, the thing that I really got out the most out of those visits were seeing how what did they do to maintain their fundamental skill set while having a full time job, like having a family and a tour schedule, just like all this crazy stuff. And it seems that across the board, everyone, what kind of kept them going was what they were doing in their daily routine. And so that's something that I hold near and dear. And um, my daily routine follows the same formula that we've been doing ever since Remington came up with the daily routine. I mean, I focus on breathing, buzzing, long tones, flexibility, articulation, like all that jazz. A few years ago, I started to really focus on intonation even more in my routine. I found, teaching students, like working with trombone choir, that is something I always tell students, that, we have a slide in our hand, like your intonation should always be on point. Like there's no reason the trombone player should sound out of tune. And for me, I started playing a different instrument 2 years ago, where the tuning tendency was completely different from my previous instrument. And I needed to, find the sweet spots as far as intonation was concerned on my instrument, and I was still working too. So I mean, I couldn't just show up to a gig and say, "Well, I'm playing on this new instrument, so if it's out of tune, sorry." I mean, nobody cares about that, especially sitting in a bass trombone chair if a section is tuning down to me anyway. So I started to really focus on intonation. And I figure there's 7 days out of the week, and there are seven there's seven trombone positions. And so why not focus on a different key every day? And so Monday is typically first position day, Tuesday is second position day, third Wednesday is third position day. So what I do on Saturday is sixth position day. So I'm either focusing on the key of F or the key of A, C, just however this shows up in the cycle throughout the week. And I also found like this was beneficial with my students. Like, so for instance, in Texas, great music education programs. But I find that, well, one, when, making all state is a thing in any state, but especially in Texas, like the students aren't required to play their scales at all. And so when they're auditioning for colleges, like they're killing it on their solos, they're killing it on their A2s, but when it's time to ask for scales, it's downhill from there, and sight reading as well. But that's another topic. So when they come to school and I'm asking them to start working on play all 12 major scales next week, they feel like that's a daunting task. So I find that, if I tell them or ask them, if you try to play a different scale every day and maybe not, try to do all 12 in one day. If that's really daunting to you, split it up, make your life a lot easier. So I found that this has also helped my students too. And so with this warm up that I do, like I said, I'm not reinventing the wheel whatsoever. I use a bunch of some of my favorite resources, and there's so many resources out there to use. And so I kind of call this scavenger hunting warm ups, because you can use anything. Anything that is in your library, you can use. You don't have to use these resources that I have listed. But these are some of my favorites that I've been using the last couple of years and have incorporated in this type of warm-up routine. So I figured today I want to make this as interactive as possible. So we're going to be doing some playing, some going back and forth and whatnot. And so yeah, looking fun forward to this. So the first thing that I do before I even touch the instrument, I focus on breathing. We're wind instruments, and that is the foundation of our playing. And so I use all kind of different toys that are even posted here in the PowerPoint. And I am a huge fan of the breathing gym. I was introduced to breathing exercises like at a young age, like back in high school, and I just found like they were really boring. Okay, just in, out, the regiment we would do a marching band. But when I learned about breathing gym, which was much later, like when I was in college, something with like that just connected with me, and it made it more interesting. And so, so some of the breathing exercises that we'll do today are stemmed from the breathing gym. So this is nothing that I've made up on my own. But when I am breathing, working on my breathing every morning, I love using a breathing tube. And I saw some people have their breathing tube, so we're gonna go on and get those out and start get our day started. Typically, especially if I have a lot of time on my hands, I could spend at least 15 minutes on breathing, sometimes 20, because I just really want to just get relaxed as possible. So some of the breathing exercises that we're going to do this morning are from breathing gym, but these are considered like flow study breathing exercises. And I usually will do this 3 different ways in 3 different sets. So quarter note equals 60, quarter note equals 80, and then also quarter note equals 120. And so with this exercise 1, we'll do 2 of these. We'll do quarter note equals 60, and then we'll do the extreme spectrum of quarter note equals 120. I like to just take in a relaxed amount of air. I'm not trying to have any tension whatsoever when I'm playing, because I believe in the famous quote by the great Emery Remington: maximum relaxation with minimum effort. And if we're breathing tense, then we're gonna play tense. So as relaxed as possible, like so. So I have my little metronome on here, and we're just gonna we'll do these together. So I have it on 60. Due to all the sharing and whatnot, there might be a delay, and that's cool. And everybody will get the point. All right, we're ready. And 1, 2, ready, and Okay. Sometimes I'll actually repeat each one of these twice too, just depending on the day. Now, this is also a nice opportunity, especially if you're not used to this, just take a little break, get the blood back going. Just remember, we don't want anyone passing out when we're doing these. Also, I find when at least going up to four, people are used to doing that. But once we get past five, six, seven, eight, it seems that some people, especially when this is new, like they start to get really tense, especially going up to eight. And we want to just try to eliminate any tension whatsoever. So even across 8 beats, just taking a nice relaxed breath across that 8. So it's not going to be the same like you're doing in for 4 and out for 4. Okay? And this is also, just in my daily regimen, I'm a huge coffee advocate. I love great coffee. And so drinking coffee and doing breathing exercises at the same time, I don't know about you guys, but just that caffeine just gives me an extreme boost. And I feel like Superman when I'm practicing. So I love having both. So we'll skip to quarter note equals 120. If you're not used to this will feel very different. The 2 counts will come very quickly, so just watch out for that too. 1, 2, and 1, 2, ready, and. Okay, all right, shake it out. I see a question about in the chat. Do you blow or use a natural deflation? I really try to be as natural as possible. I really don't try to force it out because I'm thinking more about what we're doing in a flow study, which we'll get to some flow studies a little bit later. And with flow studies, we're not forcing that out. That's just my take on it. I mean, you can do it however you want. Another thing that I also incorporate is a pinwheel too. And sometimes I just want to see what my air is doing. But I never really want to just force the air out when I'm breathing. Okay. All right. So on to the next one. So with this one, this second exercise, like again, from the breathing gym, all of these, we're going to be breathing in for 1, but we're blowing out in different beats. And I find especially, say if we're working on quarter note equals 60, this is a great way to gauge sustaining. Especially when we're thinking about doing our flow studies, we're doing our long tones, if we're incorporating this in repertoire like the Bordonis or, something like a chorale like Schumann 3, the Rhenish Symphony. This is a great way just to think about just steady airflow. So we'll do this one. We'll, just for time, we'll just do the one right in the middle. We'll do quarter note equals 80. All right, ready? And 1, 2, ready, and. Nice. And so when doing these, naturally, I'm in my home studio and I'm in my nice comfy chair. Doing these sitting down right now. You can do these however you like. What I love about my chair is this flat back and it's really good posture. But I always want to have like a straight back. I don't want to be slumped over. And I'll do these standing up too. So, just because I'm sitting down right now, do these any way that you feel comfortable. But I do these both ways as well. Okay, now on to mouthpiece buzzing. which is a big part of my daily routine, and I could spend sometimes like 20 minutes on that. But with mouthpiece buzzing, I know there's like a lot of different thoughts on mouthpiece buzzing, but like that's something that I do incorporate in my routine. Um, One of the big things when it comes to mouthpiece buzzing that I think is very important is actually buzzing with a pitch reference. And so a lot of times, we always blame intonation issues because of the right arm or where the tuning slides place, and those are deciding factors. But I feel that a lot of times when we have intonation issues is because we're buzzing out of tune. And so I always want to have some type of pitch reference when I'm buzzing. So I have this thing called penta-buzzing that I like to do where I'm just using the first 5 notes out of a major scale, and I'll do this at a piano. I have my little keyboard on my iPad right now, and I have at least this in my ear, and I can buzz around pitches. Also, I always like to use some type of resistance pipe when I'm buzzing on the mouthpiece. That's just something that works for me. And I use a lot of different things. Like today, I'll be using the Buzzard by Warburton. Sometimes I'll use a lead pipe. I have a burp on the trombone. And all of these things have different sizes too, which makes the resistance different. And so I like to change it up. But yeah, I just love using some type of resistance. And with these penta buzzing, it kind of goes like this. So that's actually a C, not a B flat, because that's just happens to be where the keyboard is right now. It goes like this. And I really try to work on doing the matching. And so this is where the intonation starts to kick in on the intonation focus part of the daily routine. And I'll just start climbing up by half steps, higher and higher and higher. Um, and yeah, it's just a nice way just to, work on the ear training. Another thing that I love using, and I've been using this for the last 10 years, um, is Benjamin Coy's mouthpiece buzzing routine. When I found out about this, I mean, this thing is just gold. You get when I first found out about it, he had it on his website, tenorpasana.com. And he has a lot of great resources on that website too. Corrals, a lot of PDFs that you can download. And now he has these mouthpiece buzzing routines on YouTube as well. And so like I've downloaded them. They're on my phone. So like if I'm like going to work, if I have a long commute, I love just buzzing along. Really good for ear training. I love using these with my students, and I feel like it works really well, especially when they're, working on like their oral skills class, and working on their ear. But in the initial set of these mouthpiece buzzing routines, there are about 30 tracks. They're all pretty short for the most part, but he even has tracks for some solos like the Morso Symphonique. He has tracks for some Bordonis as well. And so I'm going to play it just so you can hear what it sounds like if you haven't used this before, so you can kind of hear what the sequence sounds like, and then we'll do it together, and we'll just go down all these intervals. So let me test this sound and see if it works. And listen for the harpsichord. It gives you your pitch. Okay, so I think everyone has that in their ear now. So I'm going to rewind it, and we're just going to go down and start doing these together. Like I said, will probably be a delay because we're sharing sound, but everybody will get the idea. All right, here we go. Awesome. So I'll also do this two different ways. So what I did before, I was doing more of a glissing manner. So I'm just kind of scooping into the note. Totally fine if you do that. Sometimes if I'm working on just sliding notes, then I'll minimize the sound between the intervals. But you can do this however you want. All right, so we'll go on to the next interval, ascending fourths part 2. Sorry, that was the same one. This is the next one. Now moving on to some triads. Yeah, and I get it. If you've never done these before, hearing these first time can be really difficult. So that's why I usually like to play them and then do it again just so I can get the pitch in my ear. But just for time, we'll just go through. But free resource out there that everybody can take advantage of. All right, the next one. All right, and then the next week sequence, part 2. on to another sequence, the ascending tetrachords, some more scalar motion. Okay, and then next we have the descending tetrachord. All right. Also, in addition to mouthpiece buzzing, I also like to do rim buzzing as well, and I'll go back and forth in between. But for teaching purposes, I like using the rim just to kind of just demonstrate what the aperture is actually doing. But then just also just for like daily routine purposes, just to kind of gauge and protecting the buzz, like making sure that I'm not working too hard and just getting the most maximum resonant buzz as possible. So this is oscillating minor second.
Can I just jump into the question before you do?
Yeah, let me pause that.
Yeah, sorry. Alejandro
Definitely.
had a question in the chat. He says, "Hi, I have one question. Do you recommend to do the tetrachord exercises with tongue as well?"
You can do you can do these any way that you want. Now, what I do, like whenever I'm mouthpiece buzzing, I just tend to eliminate the tongue, period, because especially in the beginning of the day, and I do mouthpiece buzzing routines throughout my practice sessions as well. But I like to just focus on just keeping the air flowing and keeping the buzz going too. Very, similar to what we're doing with flow studies. But that is not the end all be all way to do that. You can do it however suits your practice sessions and what you need to focus on. And that's what's really awesome about all these different ideas and resources, because all players are different, and so you can do a lot of things that are catered to what you need. All right. Me as a teacher, I really don't have like a cookie cutter approach to every one of my students, because all of them have different skills and different areas. So I'm not going to assign them all the same thing. I'm gonna it's kind of like a doctor um, giving a diagnosis to their patients. Not everybody's going to get the same medicine. So hope that makes sense.
Yeah, can I jump in just another a little more discussion about that because I hear a lot of people talk about buzzing and not using the tongue. I've heard that recommended a lot.
Hmm.
And I was just curious, do you see any situations, especially with your students, where tongue in the mouthpiece would be beneficial, or have you found that to kind of be destructive to the buzz? I'm just kind of curious, and like, do you see a place for that or not? Because I often when I'm teaching, I'm a little unsure how to advise in that, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean we're all learning too. Um, what I find with some students, especially in the state of Texas, in like great music education programs, but seems like sometimes students use tongue too much, and that really hinders a lot of things. I mean, it's hindering their sound, it's hindering how like they're starting a note, and I know a lot of times in public schools. The beginning of a note is always kind of taught as attack, which I think is a very aggressive word. So that's why I try to eliminate the tongue as much as possible because especially when like if we're working on a bordoni and there's like a lack of airflow, and I feel like the tongue is usually just getting in the way. And we all know we can start any note without the tongue whatsoever, and so tends to be a big part of my pedagogy is eliminating like one of those sources, which is the tongue. Of course, we do use the tongue in various articulations, and I know that can be different, especially in different countries as well. I mean, I've done some of these exercises in different parts on the globe, and just articulation is different just because of different languages as well, and I can continue to go on a tangent like that, but yeah, to each his own. All right, okay, so we'll continue with oscillating minor seconds. And also, while we're doing, I was thinking just to add on to that last question. That is the cool thing about not just trombone pedagogy, but just any type of pedagogy. There's so many different things out there that work, right? There's not just one way that we do things, and especially, I have a lot of music education students, and I want them to have a whole bunch of tools in their tool belt when they're going out to teach. I don't want them just to have one bag of tricks for just one solution. I want them to have several solutions for certain fundamental issues. And so that's what's awesome about like International Trombone Hang, or when we're going to different festivals, because we can just continue to add all of these different resources to our tool belt, and just use different things. And maybe one day one of these things might work for you as opposed to another. But that's the awesome thing about just getting a whole bunch of information. So we're gonna do one more buzzing exercise, and that will be the oscillating major second. Okay, so I know we spent like a lot of time on that. It's different every day, especially when you're demonstrating something. Of course, it takes longer. Um, on a normal day, I might not do both, like the penta-buzzing on the piano and like the koi exercise. Sometimes I might do both, but you kind of just change it up and just see what kind of, how I'm feeling that certain day, like how much playing I did the night before, and I just change it up that way. But those are some of the things I do with on the mouthpiece or the rim. Now, actually getting to the horn. So if you have your trombone, let's pull those out. So the first thing that I do once, I actually got the horn on my face, I want to reinforce just some more breathing. Again, I just want to now take all those exercises that we did before, especially when we're doing the flow study breathing, and I just want to remind myself what the breathing feels like actually blowing through the trombone. So I like to put all my valves down, and I do this on all instruments. So even if I'm playing, if I have to warm up on tuba, have all 4 valves down. On trombone, valves down, slide all the way out to 7th position, and I just like to blow through the instrument. And I do this 10 times, actually 20 times, 2 sets of 10, of just relax blowing like this. And like I said, that just is a reminder of what it's going to feel like just to blow through the horn. And I'm not forcing it either. So let's just try that. We'll just do a set of 10. All right, ready? 1, 2, ready. All right, and yeah, if you feel lightheaded at all, take breaks. The whole point is to feel great, working on getting the job done. Now, I used to jump right into long tones right after I did that exercise, and I found like jumping right into long tones, like my chops just felt stiff, like didn't feel great. So the first thing that I'll do before I'll do long tones is an exercise that comes out of Ben Van Dyke's book. And I just started revisiting this book a few months ago. This book is ridiculously amazing. A lot of great stuff in here. Even though, Ben is a bass trombonist, I mean, this book is for tenor trombone players too. A lot of great exercises in this. And this exercise is called the snake. And I'm just trying to focus on sound. I don't care about time whatsoever. I just want to get the sound going, producing a sound like so. A lot of glissing. Again, not really using any tongue. Exercises like that. So let's try this together, and we'll just do these first 3 lines. All right, ready? Okay, and for time, we'll move on to some other things, but what I'll do this in all the registers, so even a little bit more than what's actually on the page. All the valves, all right, so F attachment, bass trombone players, doing like the D slide of the horn if your tuning is like that. All the partials, and when I'm just focusing on just glissing, that's really just getting the chops going and getting the chops limber. All right, and then I'll jump into long tones. And so this is also where the key focus starts. So we're going to look at like that second slide. So, usually Saturday is like a 6th position day. So today is like the key of F. And I'll do my long tones. I'll have a drone going. I love like tonal energy drones or the cello drones that's on Spotify or YouTube. I'm not going to share sound with the drones right now because that'll be very numbskulling for everybody in the room, but you'll get the point. And I'll just work on long tones and always focusing on that particular key of the day. So we'll just do some call and response here, and we'll start like with third partial F, going to fifth partial, and working our way down. All right, here we go. And you guys? And we're just going down by the half step. F to B natural. So next F to B flat, but I'll come back to the first position, fourth partial. Continuing down, F to A natural. F to A flat. F to G. F to G flat. F to E natural, all third partial. F to E flat. F to D. F to D flat. F to C. All right, and we could spend a lot of time doing this. I mean, I'm going through all of them. I'm going to as low as I can go down to pedal F and going in this extreme upper register too. And I could, some days like I've actually spent like 30 minutes just doing long tones. But what I like about doing long tones in this way, it's not just long tones, but you're also covering slurs. You're covering natural slurs as well. Or tongue assistant slurs if it's in the same overtone series, which is amazing. So you're kind of have a 2-for-1 with the long tones and the natural slurs. Okay, then I like to jump into some flow study exercises, still focusing on my key of the day. And what I like about flow studies, I feel like it bridges the gap between long tones and flexibility. And so, have the drone going, and I'll jump into some flow study. So we'll do these we'll do this call and response, and we'll just do a measure at a time. And this is the first one. All right, here we go. Okay. I'll also do the repeat down an octave. The next one is a nice oldie but goodie, a nice Arnold Jacobs flow study. I'm pretty sure that everybody in here knows about. And then after doing flow studies, this is when I spend a ton of time on flexibility. I find that in my practice sessions, I usually have like it's usually 75 to 80% is dedicated to flexibility, and I feel like that's what really gets my chops going and getting warmed up. And so I like to work on just flexing the aperture, just working on intervals that are not so wide, but just a little bit smaller. And this one in particular is not necessarily an intonation focused one. I mean, it can be, but like we're not focusing on the key of the day. But this is simply for flexing the aperture and getting everything going. So with the rest of the flexibility exercises, everything is key focused. So we'll try. We'll do the second one, fourth partial to fifth partial. And we'll go down all the way to seventh position. So I'll do it, then you guys can try. You guys? Okay, and so then after flexing the aperture, then I start getting into some more flexibility exercises. And now, like just focusing back to whatever the key of the day is. So let's try this one together. We're not going to go all the way down to seventh position because, like I said, trying to teach like what I do as far as like intonation focused every day. So just only the first one's the key of F, which we're focusing on. All right, so I'll go, and then you guys can go each line. Okay. And some more flexibility exercises that I enjoy playing out of are like things that come from like the Robert Marsteller book, also Joseph Alessi's warm up. And so, for you guys who are familiar with those, I mean, we have exercises for all keys, and this is a great way to at least, touch something in that particular key while you're still focusing on this particular technique. I really enjoy number 10 from Alessi's warm up and like this working out these various intervals. So let's try this one. awesome. It's so cool seeing everyone play, but you can't hear everyone play. Nice.
Hey,
Um,
Martin, I got a question for you real quick.
yeah.
All right, so we both teach people and stuff as well as ourselves. So let's say there's two roads to victory on flexibility, right? One
Uh-huh.
road is I'm gonna like flex my face until it gets to the point where that's a super easy thing to do, and then I'll develop efficiency over time, right? The other
Right.
road is I'm going to think about riding the air and like not thinking about the face. I feel like I've heard both. I feel like both of them get you to the same place. But what is your approach when working with students specifically?
That is a really great question, and I like both approaches, and I use both approaches even for myself too. And like I was saying before, like that's what's great, because you can't really tell a student one thing. That might click for one person, but it might not click for like four other people. And so, like, some people just might hear it a different way, even if you say the same thing, and just say it in a different way. Um, Everybody's brains are just wired differently. So, I mean, I like both approaches in all honesty. I mean, I feel like some people really have to work on flexing it out, and just know what that muscle memory feels like, especially if they weren't taught that. And then some, um, I'm finding right now, especially in the times that we're in with coronavirus, especially when school started back up in the fall, it seems like all my students were afraid to use their air because they thought that they were going to catch something. Especially like sitting when they were sitting in ensembles again with masks and bell covers and all far apart. Like they were really scared to use their wind, and so like having to reevaluate. Just like blow through this phrase, right? It's okay. We're in a safe bubble. But yeah, no, really really good question. I mean, as a teacher, I feel like I'm always learning, like every year, which is awesome. I feel like this discipline, you never like just reach the top. You're always searching to be like a better player, better teacher, and yeah, like I love like this opportunity just to like learn new things and see. That's like the cool business that we're in when we're working with different individuals and catering to those different individuals too. Yeah, but thanks for the question, Jason.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Now, probably one of my favorite books of all time is Brad Edwards' Lip Slur book. And I mean, yeah, this, if I could put all of Brad's books in my curriculum, I could, but I would. But of course, there's a lot of other things out there too. So I want my students to know about all of the resources. But this is definitely this is a must in my studio. And what I love about it, not only is it focusing on like tone production, like building endurance, building strength, but I really dig. Oh, and also too, just like the use of natural slurs. My very first trombone teacher, Greg Luscombe, who's principal trombone of the Memphis Symphony Orchestra, studied with like the Chicago Symphony guys. So like I had just natural slurs ingrained in my head as a seventh grader, and so like I really kind of took to this book when it came out, in addition to like Charlie Vernon's book. So yeah, like just the use of natural slurs and moving the slide in time. But also, what I really dig about this book is reinforcing intonation too. So I'll take several of Brad's exercises in my keys every day, and so some of these are my favorites. I believe this is either 12 and 13, or this is, yeah, I think this is number 12 and 13. So yeah, let's try these together. So I'll go and then you guys go. And what I also like about this book, as you're flipping through, and this is more on the slower side, like the first half of the book are slower lip slurs. He balances your chops out too. So for any high exercise, there's a low register exercise to kind of like balance you out, so you're like not just pounding yourself. All right, so this is the next one, which I believe is number 13. Nice. And like I said, the entire time there's a drone going on, and I'll do more series of lip slurs. So this is what the key of F usually looks like for me when I'm working out of Brad's portion. And so all this comes from Brad's book. Fast forward some more, but like I said, I usually will spend a lot of time on flexibility. After working on flexibility, then I like to start getting into some articulation, whether that's like legato or is actually using the tongue. I know we haven't really talked about tongue too much, but I do like focus on articulation as well. And so I like to do that in scale work. And this is also like one of those exercises when I say, sometimes with students who have not really played scales and don't feel comfortable doing all their scales, everything in all 12 keys, at least breaking it up where you can focus on all types of scales, but that one key. So you can focus on, playing like the whole tone scale, starting on F, working on your diminished scales, your whole tone scale, set that already, major, minor, all forms. And it doesn't sound so daunting because at least you're kind of keeping it in one little bubble, and then you can change that bubble each day. And so let's try this a la Clark Studies one, which a lot of our valve brothers and sisters really enjoy. And we'll try this one together. All right. Yeah, there's even more working on arpeggiated figures, chromatics. I'll focus on every day. I'll do chromatic scales starting on that key for the day. Another one that I really enjoy are diatonic scale patterns, also known as Remington scales. And I'll have the drone going, and I love this one because you get to focus on all the different modes as well. And so, yeah, you can find this in that oldie but goodie daily routine book by Emery Remington and edited by Don Hunsberger. So we can try these together and, breathe wherever you feel comfortable. Another reason why I like this exercise too is it gives us the opportunity to breathe in a lot of different places. I don't always stick to like where those breath marks are, and yeah, especially that first breath mark is very unnecessary after the first beat. But when we have to play things like Mozart's Requiem Kyrie or bass trombone players, Haydn's Creation, and we don't really have that many places to breathe. This is a great way to also work on like sipping breaths and keeping the music going as well. And even though we did this in more of like or I did this in a more tenuto staccato fashion, I'll do this in different articulations as well. I'll do it legato, and I'll do it do it soft, do it loud, just anything to kind of stretch those boundaries. All right, and then after that, I like doing interval studies. I feel like interval studies are like having your vegetables every day, and just this is a great way to work on sliding things in. So we were talking about tongue usage earlier. This is one that I really like to focus on, tongue, but I find that when we're articulating, of course, like our tongue is sliding in these different places inside our mouth. And I find that a lot of times when there are, well, in the brass world, we'll say frack a note, or when we miscenter a note, sometimes, yes, it could be an air deficiency, but then also we're not sliding our tongue in the right place. And that's why, we produce like a cracked note. And so this is a great opportunity to really focus on sliding in those notes. Now, me personally, I really try not to think too heady about that, because I also feel when you think too heady about that, that's when issues do occur. But, as a teacher and then trying to, dissect problems or fundamental issues with my students, I find that this is a great way to fix things. Doing them slow. I like to do these in various ways. Articulate it for one, and then I'll do like a slur two style. Like that. I'll slur everything. We'll play everything connected just to work on having a steady airstream, and then work on the oral cavity, doing the work, etc. Then I'll also do these down an octave as well, just to work on the valve register too. So yeah, like interval studies, just for time, we're just going to move ahead. But yeah, Clark studies, like those things are great. Now, by then, like my warm-up routine is technically over. Like now I'm getting into like my other fundamental routine, like etudes. And I love playing Bordonis. That's just an oldie but goodie for me. And so I'll still focus on my etudes with that particular key too. And so, on my F days, I'll pick, like maybe one or two of these etudes in the key of F. And I like to do these in various ways as written, down an octave, down 2 octaves to really humble myself, tenor clef to humble myself, tenor clef down an octave. And this is a great way to also just, even though when we're doing this in tenor clef, we're not in the key of F anymore, but this is a great way just to work on just, playing in a musical fashion, and everything that, I would have covered so far as far as like the fundamental technique, I can start applying to actually making music, because that's what it's all about, to be honest with you. You can have the greatest technique in the world, but if you can't play musical, like nobody really cares. It's so yeah, I always like to reinforce like those habits in fundamentals. So I'll choose some of those. On the technical end, I love the Koprosh book. I mean, there's a lot of great technical books out there, but this is one book that I'll use. And for example, on key of F day, I'll choose one of these etudes too. And most importantly, after not just a warm-up session, but also after any practice session, any rehearsal, I'm a firm believer in warming down and protecting the face. And I'm always telling students, don't run out of rehearsal to jump to your next class. Like, protect your face, because that's going to set you up for the next time that you have to play the horn. And when I'm usually warming down, I'll either do some soft, low flow studies. I'll do some more glissing, and it's usually not louder than mezzo piano. I'm just really just trying to just get everything just nice and delicate and just back in shape. In the Austin area, we have big band shows that go until 1:30 a.m. and it tends to be, with that third set, the more alcohol the band is drinking, the louder the band is playing. And so, like, yeah, your face can definitely be fried the next day. And so, even like when we finish at 1:30, like I'm in the back of the club and warming down, because I just want to make sure that my face feels good the next day. But those are some things that I hold near and dear to, my warm up routine. Let me stop sharing the screen here. If anyone has any questions, I missed a whole bunch of questions because it's hard to check those in the chat and monitor two screens right now. But those are some of the things that I do every day. And what I like about it, it keeps the same formula, with breathing all the way down to flexibility and actually working on music. But it gives you variety every day. So for some people, I know I'm doing the same routine, like I'm getting bored with it, but at least it's different every day and you're still working on like those target fundamentals too. But, I want to thank the International Trombone Hang for having me and, let me share some of my ideas on daily routine. If anybody have any questions?
There's one question that popped up. First off, thank you. Really appreciate it. It's great to go through. And I know sometimes we've had some presenters that have said, well, I don't really do anything unique or special or different or whatever. I play long tones. I play this. Teo often says we all cook with water. That's kind of the way that he refers to it. Yeah. But I think there's something to be said for having so many people come on that are great, accomplished players that, that can really do some great things on the instrument. That harken back to the basic technical pillars of foundation. I think there's something to be said for, hearing and seeing everybody doing that. But I do think everybody has a slightly unique and individualized approach. And so thanks so much for, sharing that with us today. There was a question in the chat that came up and it had to deal with kind of how high you get. That's probably the worst way I could say it. But how much you do in the upper register, like how much time do you spend up there? And as a bass player, I find it to be a particularly interesting question because on the one hand, we don't really work up there as much, but on the other hand, we still need to play up there. So, I'm curious how much time you spend up there.
Every day, and that's in the routine. So even though we didn't get a chance to get there, that's starting one with the snake, like the Ben Van Dyke snake. So like I'm going through like up to 9th partial, 10th partial, doing that. The long tones also has that. And so like this routine can be rather long. Like I said, like long tones, you could spend at least like 30 minutes trying to cover every interval. What's the next thing? Flexibility and flow studies, the same thing too. So every one of those target fundamentals that we talked about today, especially with flexibility, that's when I'm spending like a ton of time there. And for every day, it's different too. So like on Monday, if that's like first position day, then that might be a little bit different. Like I'm focusing on like the key of B flat, for instance, or maybe the key of D. And so like I think that's really important because especially like in like the freelance world, like those things show up like quite a bit. I do like a lot of like the Broadway touring shows that come through town, and I actually have to play tenor on that stuff too. And it's important to have that technique, especially if you're a bass trombone player.
Yeah, I know a lot of players that, and card carrying member, full disclosure, like there was a time where I switched to bass because my upper register was so not awesome that I was just playing the lower parts and I was having more success in the low parts. I was getting gig in the low parts. Next thing you know, I'm a bass trombonist. So sometimes it can be kind of an underdeveloped or, kind of gets swept under the rug a little bit for some bass players and some low specialists. So
absolutely. And that's also I like to in my warm-up sessions, but this is actually a second practice session with like the etudes too, like the Bordonis, and then like really like stretching yourself as well. Yeah, so yeah, never, it doesn't matter like if you play bass or even you play tenor, never neglect your full range whatsoever, because it's important to have all that.
So, and not to monopolize the question, so please jump in, chime in, either in the chat, raise your hand, whatever. But when you mention a second practice session, I'm interested now. How many practice sessions do you typically get? How much time do you try to get on the instrument, per day? Obviously, we have busy days, teaching days, travel days, gig days, whatever. But in a perfect situation, let's say you're snowed into your house, there's a global pandemic happening, you don't have anywhere to be, and you're just going to practice as much as you want. Like, how much would you do? Like, what kinds of, I'm just curious, like, what you kind of do.
Yeah, well, I mean, all those things actually happened last week. Was definitely snowed in. Like, school was canceled, so I had all the time in the world. It was amazing. But I mean, typically, at least 3 hours a day, to be honest with you. I mean, my students know how I am. Actually, I don't teach before 1 o'clock. My first lesson starts at 1 o'clock. Mainly just so I can take care of myself first. So I can go through my routine. I've already had a few practice sessions before I teach my first lesson. I'm a big advocate for like self-care, because there's no way that I can pour into my students and show them like the things that you have to do if I'm not taking care of myself first. And so yeah, like before that first lesson, I know I feel great because I've done several things. Currently now, like, I'm getting ready to record another project with my wife, so like that's also on the practice stand right now. And I've been fortunate to actually get to still do like some virtual recitals and whatnot, like even via like a Zoom situation. So like I have to keep the chops up. And so I try to I never really like to try to put a time limit on things. Like, I want to, I think it's important to be as efficient as possible, even if I only had like maybe an hour a day. But I want that hour to be as efficient as possible. But yeah, typically, and at least 3. Which I feel like is, those are like some golden times right there. But yeah, but I usually try to protect like that practice time. As opposed to like teaching. I mean, on a regular week, like I'll teach like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I have like my Monday and Fridays for like extra stuff, so I can like really spend a lot more time. So Monday and Fridays will typically be even longer than like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if that's like my normal teaching schedule.
And I noticed you got a lot of horns behind you. How often?
Oh yeah.
How often? Or unless that's one really big set of triggers on that one horn, But how often do you play like tenor trombone, or how often are you doubling? I know you. I think you and I both identify as like a bass specialist, perhaps. But how much time do you spend on the other horns?
Well, I usually play my tenor every day because I teach majority are tenor students. But well, I mean, before the pandemic, I mean, I was freelancing quite a bit, and I would either do some shows where I have to play tenor all the way down to tuba, or even you will get sub work on tenor, like with the Memphis Symphony Orchestra, San Antonio Symphony, Hawaii has called me to do tenor and second trombone and bass regularly. And when I have like opportunities like that, when I know that I have like a double week, I try to prepare like a month in advance on the double week, and so I can talk about like that warm up as well. So when I have a double week, the warm up will be a little bit different. So I'll still focus on like those, like the target fundamentals on my primary instrument, which is bass. But if I know that I have to do like a tenor gig, then I'm going to warm up on tenor, and I'm going to do target fundamentals, not as long as I did on bass, but just, like some simple things, some long tones, quicker long tones, definitely a lot of flexibility, just to get the different type of airstream, which is very different from bass, especially from tuba. That's a completely different airstream, working on like the valve coordination. And so, yeah, usually I get like a month's notice if I have like a big doubling gig. I mean, there have been some times where I've got called to play like second trombone in an orchestra with like a 4-hour notice, and yeah, then you just gotta change like your mindset and whatnot. And even some opportunities in one day where I'll play maybe second trombone in an orchestra, and then I'll have to play bass in a big band, like maybe 3 hours like after the fact. And so it's all about the warm ups. And I love Micah Everett's book. It might be called The Art of Low Brass Doubling. Yeah, like that. The book is great, and it really focuses on target fundamentals. So that's like what I jump into when I'm really focusing on my doubles.
Nice.
I'm gonna have to hop off now, but because I gotta go teach. I just sent a message in the chat. I just want to say thank you because like there's so much variety in what you've done. I already have like a ton of ideas of stuff to work on. So thank you. This is really a varied approach. I appreciate that. But please continue. Any questions? Keep going. I mean, I gotta go teach, but you know, yeah.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's nice meeting you.
See, Dave. One other question. Maybe while people are thinking of the questions they're going to ask, and hopefully there are a ton. Let's say a kid comes to you and says, "I'm thinking about playing an instrument, but I haven't made up my mind yet." And of course, you're going to say, "Well, the trombone's the greatest instrument ever." And they say, "Yeah, but I'm thinking of some other instruments." And you have a chance to maybe give them a recording or suggest a CD or an album or something that's kind of been laid down at some point to convince them that trombone is an amazing instrument. What recording are you gonna send their way? Like, what recording is there a recording that sticks in your mind as like, man, that is what it's about, that's why I play, that's what I wanted to do?
Yeah. Well, when I did have to do that like years ago when I was teaching in the public schools. I guess that's when YouTube started to become a thing. Like that's what I would do in lessons. Just to get them motivated, I would show them different videos. Of course, like all the greats, like Joe Alessi. Charlie Vernon was my hero. If I had a female trombonist, I show them videos like the crazy Star Spangled Banner video of Bones Apart. I'm like, oh, because also I think representation is an important thing too. Like, want them to know, like, yeah, there are killing female trombone players out there. I mean, my undergraduate trombone professor was a female, and so if someone asked me that now, it would still be the same thing. It probably wouldn't just be one thing. It'd be a trombone shorty, just to show like, oh, this is what the trombone can do. This it would be like Carol Jarvis. It would be James Markey. I mean, the names can go on. I actually feel bad because I don't want to leave anybody out, but like there's just so many great names and so many genres too. I think that's also really important. In Texas, like, we have a very large Hispanic population, and I want them to be aware of the great Hispanic trombone players that are out there too. So like David Rajano, and all the great stuff. I mean, there's so many great players. So that's just really, really important. And yeah, for me, what really got me going in high school, like, I had every Christian Lindbergh CD out there. And then I had all Joseph Alessi CDs. I was a tenor trombone player at the time. And then I learned about J.J. Johnson and, just had a bunch of his stuff. So, yeah, I mean, even currently with, some students, I've just switched to students of bass trombone at the end of last semester. And I told them, like, you have to know about George Roberts. I mean, that's an important sound that you have to have in your ear. So that's a very long-winded answer, but that's what's cool about now, even as opposed to like when I was teaching in public school like 15 years ago. There's even way more amazing players out there, but I want them to know about the great players of now and also the great players who aren't with us anymore. There's a lot of stuff in the chat. I hate that I missed all this.
Half of it was banter. I wouldn't worry too much about it. You're welcome to go back and read it, but Dominic, you always have a question. Come on, man.
All right, what coffee you've got in the cup at the moment?
All right, so my morning coffee is Illy. I love Illy coffee. Usually my afternoon coffee will be Bustelo. my wife has a lot of piano students from Colombia, and she's not a coffee drinker at all. And so, like, I basically get all this great Colombian coffee. And so, yeah, like I'm digging that right now. But yeah, oh, and this is out. I'm due for my next batch.
Oh, I've just had some amazing Kenyan this morning, and I'm up for my warm down, which is made of hops, water, yeast, and grain. So
Nice.
Scary, very scary. Martin, I noticed that you have a line of mouthpieces from put out by Pickett Brass. Which one do you use yourself?
I actually use them all. My day-to-day, what I usually use every day, is called the McCain One, and as far as the size, it is slightly smaller than a Bach one. It's kind of close to like a Greg Black 1 1/8, I believe, or maybe 1 3. I forget, but yes, slightly smaller than a Bach one. If like for my tenor mouthpiece, the rim is actually the same, and that's like one big thing as far as like rims are concerned for me, because when I first moved to Austin, like I was offered so many tenor gigs and I turned them down because I just felt like I sounded like crap on tenor. And like the main thing was because I didn't have a mouthpiece that really suited my face. And so I had Pickett make a mouthpiece that is the same rim, but the cup is equivalent to like a Bach 3. And so the pitch is not sacrificed whatsoever. And so I can still try to, fit, a lot of like my tenor trombone playing is either playing second trombone or playing a show, or I teach at some chamber festivals where I'm playing tenor because there's not a ton of chamber, like brass trio music, for instance, that incorporates bass trombone. So I'll usually play tenor for that. And so, yeah, that works really good for me. And if I'm doing something, like for instance, I had a brass quintet gig a few weeks ago. I'll use something larger, something that's equivalent to like a Bach 1, just to kind of work on matching, like, getting a better, something that match like a tuba sound, if possible. And, but yeah, Pickett's been great. Like I was really fortunate to be, I guess one of his like first, trombone players that he was working with, because he's huge in the trumpet world. And, he started out with me, Wycliffe Gordon got a line going. Karicho Yamamoto kind of started out with the tenor trombone stuff. And so it's nice to be able to work with somebody. And the cool thing is it's forever changing. Like we're going to be working on some stuff right now. You're good. I feel like I need to do the same thing. But yeah, like the next thing we're actually going to be doing is we're going to be changing the throat a little bit. We're going to be changing the design there, play around with that. So yeah, I hope that I can get up to Lexington, Kentucky at some point. I just love going up there, go grab some bourbon like on my trip and just hang out at the Pickett shop and just geek out.
Good for you. Yeah. My range, I play from an 11C down to bass trombone mouthpieces, so it's a little different for amateurs. I can play everything. I play anything from played the bass trombone on Symphony No. 5 of Tchaikovsky, which is a treat, and then you're playing lead in a big band. So I'm all over the place, but I'm still looking for the ideal mouthpiece. The one I'm currently on right now is just something that says Holton 1.5G on it, and I got this in 1980 in a trade. So
nice.
It still works. I've got and I got a Kelly. This is always my second best mouthpiece, but this glows in the dark. How many mouthpieces? Oh, cool. How many mouthpieces do you have that glow in the dark?
I have none that glow in the dark. There's no excuse to not practice it when the lights go out, because that was definitely the situation here last week with no.
Yeah, you guys were in a world of hurt down there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's too bad.
I'm sorry. Sometimes I just buzz on my rim, and I forget if I'm not muted or whatever. So sorry about that.
Oh no, man, you're
a natural response. I don't know. It's like doing that for me sometimes, but.
Somebody passed on this tool to me, which is an old Bach mouthpiece thing.
Oh yeah,
we got the same one.
Trombone, yeah.
Yeah, I got that in the studio. That was my first rim.
So there's a couple of options for those. So you can get like a rim cutaway mouthpiece, or if you're handy with tools, you can just take like either a Dremel or a hacksaw and just cut part of it off, so that it has the shank and you can put it into your instrument and then essentially play in a way where, since you're holding your trombone, it's like the same angle on your face. And some people would like to do that. But then Toby Off kind of started to popularize the idea of just cutting everything away to just the rim, so that you don't get that little bit of fuzziness that comes from having the obstruction of the other part of the metal kind of in front of the rim. So there's kind of those two schools of thought. One is having the version that goes in your horn, and then one is having just the ring, so there's nothing in the way. So you hear as pure of a sound as possible.
And some people have the screw together mouthpieces so you can take off whatever parts you want.
Yeah, you can just unscrew it and then you're good to go. So yeah, exactly right. Arnold had it. Yeah. So all sorts of stuff. Well,
can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, go for it, Paul.
I'm a classic brass band player and played euphonium pretty much all of my life, and you can tell I've been around for some time doing concerts. Yeah, with concerts of Don Lusher and people like that at the Albert Hall, but we won't go into that. But I've seen the light, and I've just started playing trombone for the past year. And a guy called Brett Baker, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but it was him that started me off on it. So I'm playing with a Dennis Wick for ABL. I'm playing solo trom, and I've got an old king here with a trigger. Really, as a solo trom player, what sort of mouthpiece and what sort of instrument would you recommend as a brass band player?
Oh wow, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I'm not a brass band player like whatsoever. Don't even think. No, I've never even played in a brass band. That's probably one of the few genre that I haven't jumped into yet. I respect the playing though. I mean, like, that stuff's incredible. But I'm always hesitant to tell someone or recommend someone an instrument because there's so many great instruments. Like, there's so much great equipment out there, and I feel like the time is very different than it was like 30 years ago, when there were like limited brands, and then there were also limited instruments, mouthpieces. I mean, now, like, there's so many great things out there. Yeah, I couldn't say like I recommend this brand, and just because I play Shires, I'm not going to say play Shires, and my students know that. Like, I don't recommend them. I want them to play what best fits them, and so yeah, I'm sorry, I couldn't really answer that the best way, but whatever these brass band cats are playing, especially I know Brett and a lot of those cats are playing Wrath. Which I played for several years.
My suggestion too, it also depends on the brass band. I mean, if you're looking at Black Dijk and these guys, they're playing orchestral equipment. They're playing 547s, and a lot of the professional brass band players I see in North America, like Hannaford, might step down to a 525. But I played in a brass band for 30 years in a church band. We had the largest organ in Canada and a 30-piece brass band and an additional choir and a carillon and all this stuff. It was fantastic. But the guy that I played beside him, he's in the band for over 65 years, literally. He played a King 3B with an 11C, and that's what he always played. You couldn't get him to change from it, and he had many people that supported that view. But that's a smaller brass band sound as opposed to the orchestral sound. You've got professional players playing now, so they're using larger equipment because that's what they play. And if you're going to play 2 hours a day, yeah, go for it. I have my old Bach 42B, but I've also got a house full of Yamaha horns because I bought some and somebody else gave me all of theirs. So, I've got a Yamaha 882 GOR, nice horn. But I might normally play a Yamaha 891Z, which is a marvelous. It's my favorite horn. I use that for every small bore tenor gig I have. And if I need to go to something orchestral, I can move up to my old Bach 42B or something of that. And then I've got my, in Canada, they've done a marvelous job with Yamaha. They just have them everywhere. So I tried 15 bass trombones, and from Shires to Ras to Edwards, and the local dealer had the best Yamaha Xeno I'd ever seen. So I'm playing an 830 Xeno simply because I could have driven to Wisconsin to buy an Edwards, but it just seemed to be easier to go 20 minutes up the road and buy this one, just because it turned out to be as good as every other Edwards. But everybody's got a story. And you know, one thing about horns, you don't have to be a great player to identify a good horn. You can.
No, thanks, guys. There's a Con 88. Apparently that's supposed, 88. That's supposed to be fairly good. I did have a back 42 that I've been learning on, but it didn't have a trigger. So I'm lazy. I need a trigger. So I've got this King that I'm playing on at the moment. But I've seen reviews on various horns, and that 88 Con seems to be quite a good one for sort of orchestral, but doubling up as brass band as well.
Well, I was over in, through various people, I ended up going to Bergen, Norway and working over there for my day job. And I got to attend a couple of brass band. And Norway, if you don't know, wins the brass band, the world brass or the European championships every year. And I got to the Ikanger band, which wins the European champion every year. And everybody was playing Con 88s. The other band I went to was in town. It came in fourth in Norway, and they had an entire cabinet full of instruments. Being Norwegian, they've got oil money. They buy everything, and everybody's playing Con 88 over there. That's it. And you wouldn't go wrong if you bought a Con 88H. I've got a 42B because it was on sale. I got it brand new. It was a 1972 model, and I bought it in 1974, and it still plays great. And I paid a lot of money for it. I paid $500 Canadian brand new.
Wow.
And sorry to jump in, Martin, or whatever.
No worries.
Either Martin, but recently I've started to do a lot of work with brass bands. I teach at the North American Brass Band Summer School, and it's been great. I've been working with Dr. Baker, actually. He and I both teach there. We have taught there. One of the things that I'll generally say about brass bands, in my experience, kind of having a little bit of brass band and a little bit of orchestra, is that when you are playing in a brass band, there are 3 rows of cornets, there are 2 rows of euphoniums, there are 6 tubas. You know, like, it is a huge brass sound, and it's very conical. It's a very wide brass sound. So if you're playing a trombone and trying to match in that ensemble, there's really 2 ways you can go. You can either go really orchestrally so that the trombones have a very different sound from the rest of what's going on, and then their contribution is quite unique. Or you can have a much wider sound, which gives you the opportunity to kind of blend into, you know, the kind of the brass band sound. As a bass trombonist, I like having a lot of sizzle on my sound, because in that ensemble, if I want to cut through, I would rather cut through with finesse, not force. So I would want to be able to have a timbral opportunity to kind of cut through. And I find that in the brass band world, that tends to be a really good tool in the tool belt. So if you have some kind of instrument, equipment, style, concept of playing that you can kind of cut through the ensemble without just trying to be overbearing, it gives you a lot more freedom in that particular ensemble. But the instrumentation is quite different. But like Martin said, there's a lot of cats that are using, you know, orchestral equipment, and they're fine. And then you also might start, you know, you might see more gold brass and rose brass bells, you know, as opposed to the yellow brass bells. But I mean, there are people that are using yellow in there as well. But I think if there's, you know, for me in brass band, if there is equipment that helps me have that kind of, like, you know how some cars have nitrous oxide and you can push a button and it goes like really fast, you know, I kind of want to be able to just flip a switch and cut through that ensemble when I need to. And I find that having an instrument that gives me that freedom of timbre is probably the best advice I would give in that scenario. So I don't know if that helps.
So what would you recommend, Jason, for an instrument that would provide that?
I find that a lot of makers that are particularly heading toward maybe the gold or the red brass bells, and I find horns that have, and this is general, heavier mouthpieces and lighter bells tend to be the kinds of instruments that give you that opportunity to cut. I don't necessarily go for a certain brand because I think, like Martin said, depending on the brass band you're playing in, that could vary. But those are just some general considerations in terms of the equipment. So, you may find that there is a Wrath, but if it's a beautiful instrument, but if it was designed with an orchestral, mindset, it may not cut the same way as maybe one of the Yamahas that was just constructed a little differently. And there are some Bachs that are fantastic, but a Bach 42G, which is a gold bell, and a Bach 42B, which is a yellow bell, I think they usually play quite differently. A single bore versus a dual bore instrument, they usually play quite differently, and that's going to vary by player. So it's tough to make a blanket recommendation for a specific horn. But you may even want to ask Dr. Baker, because he tends to play on some of the smaller equipment too, because he wants to cut through, and he's kind of like the 21st century Arthur Pryor with his technique. He's all over the place. And if you don't know Brett Baker, you got to check him out. But his equipment's not large. Like he's not working too hard, so I think he's going for that cut when, he wants to be able to cut through.
I want smaller equipment that is easier to play as I pass 60. And the other thing too is if you're playing brass band bass trombone, it's more fun. It's one of the few really legal things that you can do that is absolutely the most fun. But when you look at a brass band, you've got the E flat bass supplies the note, the B flat bass supplies the weight, and the bass trombone supplies the edge. And if you have people that truly know how to write for brass band, Peter Graham, Stephen Bulla, is James Curnow is a brass bander from, and the winner of them all over in England is Derek Ball, for sacred music as well as a number of other secular pieces. I mean, he understood where to use the instrument. It's like playing Tchaikovsky. If you're playing trombone parts, he knows what the bass trombone is going to do. You're playing with bassoons, you're playing with cellos, you're playing with the trombone section, and sometimes you're just playing. It's just so fantastic. So it depends on and it's also the sound of what your conductor wants you to sound like. Some people, I played in one group, I had a Yamaha 321 single trigger bass trombone. I could take the paint off the back, and the people in the band wanted me to do that. I had more fun. I played solos in front of the band. I had a great time with that horn. I wish I had it still, but I think it's still available, but it's 50 years old almost now, and it's pretty well done. But it's still a matter of, I've got my Yamaha baby right here, my Zeno, because I knew Martin was doing bass trombone stuff today, so I brought out my bass. And this is the best Zeno I've ever played. But I can tell you, I've gone to, petting zoos at various things they've had in Toronto where they had the Yamaha product lined up, and there's some real clunkers on Yamahas, even though they're supposed to be consistent. The worst horns I played that were a lot of money in Toronto is Shires, mainly because the dealer up here doesn't know how to sell them. They don't fit the people. They say, take some bits in the back room. And, the people that play the best up this way on American equipment are Edwards, because they went to the factory and Christian Grigo fitted them for their instrument, and they walked out of there very happy with the instrument because it's for them, And so whenever you're looking for a horn, find out what it is, try it out with the band, see if people like it. And that's what it's got to be. And as an amateur, I have the, if you're getting paid and you say this conductor doesn't like trombones and it's marked double forte, he wants mezzo forte, play whatever he wants and get your paycheck, right? But if you're an amateur and a guy says, your guys are playing loud all the time and I don't like the way you sound, then for me, after being in a brass band for 34 years, I quit 6 years ago, and I'm playing with other groups who appreciate me more. I'm playing better than I did back then, but I just got tired of being the section or that in the band they didn't like, because they liked the conical sound. They didn't like the cylindrical sound that trombones make. And they admitted, yes, the trombone is different, but the conductor never understood, with some really good players. And some of them, one guy was a retired university professor from out west in Canada, and he was playing on his Con 88H and playing very well, but she didn't like the sound of the band. And so after a while, I'm not getting paid. Why am I beating myself being here? And I was better off moving off. And since then, I'm playing with an awful lot of more varied things, from 2 big bands to helping out a couple of orchestras to, you know, and any number of things that come along. And I've got a growing a library full of trombone quartets, quintets, trios, etc. So, you know, find a place that makes you happy to play. If you're happy where you are, find the horn that makes everybody else happy, and you're going to have a good time.
Hey, thanks, guys. That's great advice. I don't know whether I'm fortunate or unfortunate, but the MD is the trombone player. So I may have a little empathy, but also he's going to scrutinize me very closely. So, you know, I better be on my game. But hey, great advice. Thanks very much, guys. And I've really, really enjoyed today. I've learned a hell of a lot. So.
Awesome. Glad you can make it, Paul. Arnold, you want to chime in?
Just a quick question is, anyone is tried before is a silver trombone?
Can you spell it?
Trombone.
Which trombone? Sorry, didn't hear the name of the trombone.
And anyone is tried before is silver plated trombone?
Oh, silver. Oh, silver plated. Yeah, I tried them. I owned a Constellation.
My first trombone was a Selmer. It was a small board, but the sound was amazing. And I know one guy, the name is Dijk, maybe someone has heard that name. He was in the first trombonist in the Berlin Philharmoniker, and he had before in the silver Anthony Courtois trombone, and the principal said this, change immediately for the silver for the brass one, because it's not image for the Berliner orchestra for the silver one. But I think that one is, for me, is much nicer sound, but it's very rarely found that horn, what is silver.
Well, I've seen silver horn. There was a Rath dealer over here that was going around to everybody. You needed a red brass tuning crook, and they were selling. She was going, "This is the secret sauce," and she was selling them to everybody. You got to try this. And oh, by the way, they have Hagman valves, and do you want heavy valve caps? Oh my goodness! And the heavy valve caps were going to make a difference on how you're. And they walk up to you and go, "Do you want heavy valve caps?" You go, "Sure." Or you could say, what's that going to do? You know, gear is. You know, you can talk about gear forever. And I know I was corresponding back and forth with the bass trombonist of the Scottish Opera, and he's basically bought a Rath, but he soldered everything in place to avoid temptation. He's got something that works. He doesn't want to change it anymore. So he soldered it in place.
Wow.
That's like a padlock on the cookie jar.
That's basically exactly. The more bits you got, the more horns you got. I've only got 7 trombones in the house right now, but about 4 instruments get used regularly. But the other ones are sitting there. I've even got a bass trumpet that a friend bought because he heard them on Otzel Brass, and he wanted to have he got a deal on it. Something like $500. He bought himself a 3-valve Czech-made bass trumpet, and then when he switched to bassoon, I got all these instruments. So
amazing,
nice.
And it's another thing. It's a bit of sprinkles on the cookies. You know, when you talk about the cookie jar. So.
Well, I'm at the point I have more smokers than trombones now. So
same old deal, right?
There was a trumpet podcast that I listened to called The Open Bell, and it's 3 trumpet professors. They're all good friends, you know, witty banter, all that stuff, but they've got very good advice. And one of them is an avid cyclist, does a lot of, has many bicycles or whatever.
Yeah.
And when the question of equipment came up, he said, well, it's the same for bicycles as it is for trumpets. The answer is N+1. How many horns should you have? N is the number of horns you have. And so the formula is N+1. You know, there's always that one more or that next one, you know, and for a lot of players that, are in a position to keep, collecting and trying and, experimenting, it's great. And it can be a lot of great fun. But, I personally have to be a little more budget conscious given my current life. I mean, I got to feed these 16 chickens like that. I can't just be buying horns all the time. So I find that I have a small number and they work. I'm good, and then maybe every 10 years or so, I'll probably, I'll go into that room at the conference, kind of a thing.
The petting zoo.
Yeah, the petting zoo. Yeah. Well, look, this has been fantastic. Really great conversation. Martin, great session. Thank you so much. And I'm glad you could all, stick it out and be here and share. Please do feel free, to come back. You're on the email list, hopefully, so you'll get the emails. We've got a couple of people lined up for the next couple of weeks, and we've probably got another half a dozen that we're talking to and trying to schedule. So this isn't going away anytime soon. So, if you want to chime in and join us, encourage your students and friends, we'd love to have them here as well. And enjoy the rest of your week. But thanks again, Martin. Really appreciate today.
Oh, thank you so much.
Well,
It's been awesome, everybody.
Yeah.